Bridgerton is known for being one of the most passionate shows on Netflix, but what you see on screen is the polished version of the absurd and chaotic things that happened on that set. We're going to get into all of it, and we're saving the wildest one for last. Starting with the goofy part, before Jonathan Bailey could step in front of the camera for any of Anthony Bridgerton's reckless scenes, a makeup artist had to get to work on his behind, specifically to make it look good on camera and shimmer and shine. And look, when you think about the level of detail that goes into every Bridgerton frame, it almost makes sense. But there's something about a professional makeup artist having to apply product to a lead actor's rear end that puts the whole period drama glamour thing into a very different perspective, and it only gets stranger from here. Here's one that genuinely changes how you watch the show. That library scene between Simon and Daphne, one of the most talked about moments in the entire first season, was the very first scene Regé-Jean Page and Phoebe Dynevor ever filmed together. They hadn't built any real friendship or connection yet. They hadn't spent weeks getting comfortable around each other on set. They just showed up, met properly, and then had to go straight into one of the show's most heated scenes. And what's wild is that you cannot tell. The tension is completely believable, which says a lot about both of them as actors, but also raises the question of how that first day of filming actually felt, because that is not a normal way to meet someone. Funnily enough, it gets absolutely crazier. For the emotionally intense scenes between Anthony and Kate in season 2, the coordinator used a half-inflated netball for their heated scene. The netball was placed between him and Simone Ashley during filming to create natural physical movement while keeping them separated. Because coordinators on set have very specific ways of making scenes look convincing without actual physical contact, and apparently, this particular method involved a partially deflated sports ball. So while you're watching what looks like a deeply passionate moment between Anthony and Kate, Jonathan Bailey is essentially balancing a piece of gym equipment between himself and his co-star. The dedication to making it look effortless is honestly impressive and slightly hilarious. Season 3 spicy scenes still live rent-free in many fans' heads, and before we get into the absurd things that happened when they filmed the mirror scene, you need to understand what Nicola was carrying into it. Because for Nicola Coughlan, filming Penelope's scenes in season 3 wasn't about hitting marks and remembering lines. There had been so much public conversation about her body leading up to her season, and Nicola decided, very deliberately, that she was going to respond to all of it on screen. She told stylists that being very vulnerable on camera was entirely her own idea, her own choice. She said that felt like the biggest way to say something back to everyone who had been talking about her body, and that it was amazingly empowering, and knowing that going into everything that happened during that 3-day shoot makes it hit completely differently. Now, while Nicola was arriving to set with all of that intention and power, Luke Newton showed up wearing what he described as a cup bag-shaped thing for his protective wear. And he already knew, before a single camera rolled, that Nicola was going to lose it when she saw him in it. So he actually went to her beforehand and asked if it was okay to show her, so that she could get the laugh out of her system before they started filming. They had what Luke called a little giggle off screen. And then they had to film one of the most emotionally charged scenes of the entire series. The contrast between Nicola's mindset walking into that scene and Luke arriving in a bag-shaped cup asking for permission to make her laugh first is the kind of detail that makes you appreciate how human all of this actually is. So things were already emotionally loaded on that set, and then the chaise lounge broke. Penelope and Colin's energy was apparently so convincing or so forceful that the furniture being used in the scene could not hold up. And this is where it gets even more chaotic. Production couldn't just stop, swap it out, and start over. They were mid-scene, so the crew came in, assessed the damage, and devised a solution: apple boxes. They propped the broken chaise lounge up with apple boxes and various other items to stabilize it enough to keep filming. So what you see on screen, this perfectly elegant, steamy moment between Colin and Penelope, was happening on top of furniture that was being physically held together by production equipment. And all of that was just getting through one part of filming, because the mirror scene alone took 3 days. The first day was focused entirely on Penelope getting comfortable in front of the mirror, and Luke said his entire priority that day was making sure Nicola felt supported and comfortable in that environment. Nothing else mattered to him on day one except making sure she felt safe. When you think about everything Nicola brought to this scene intentionally, you realize how much trust had to exist between these two people. 3 days, multiple layers of emotion, and furniture that had already given up on them. But all of that is still not the most absurd thing that happened on a Bridgerton set during an intimate scene. Not even close. Because what happened in season 4 takes everything we just described and completely blows it out of the water. And before we even get to the bathtub scene between Sophie and Benedict, there's something that happened earlier in season 4 that set the tone for just how difficult this pair's scenes were to film. Because for their staircase scene, both Luke Thompson and Yaren Ha were ill, both of them at the same time. So you have two actors already having to navigate the vulnerability and coordination that comes with filming an emotionally charged scene, doing all of it while their bodies are actively fighting something off. There was no option to reschedule or swap out, just two sick people having to show up, hit their marks, and make it look effortless on camera. And the wild thing is, you'd never know, which means they pushed through it completely. But if you thought that was the hardest thing they had to deal with on set, you haven't heard about the bathtub scene yet. Season 4 brought us a new love story and a new level of behind-the-scenes chaos. The bathtub scene between Yaren Ha and Luke Thompson became one of the most talked about moments of the season, and what fans saw on screen was the result of 6 straight hours of filming. 6 hours in a bathtub. Now, 6 hours of anything sounds exhausting, but 6 hours in a bathtub, in a period drama, with all the preparation and setup involved in making every single frame look like it belongs in a painting, that's a different kind of endurance. And the conditions of that shoot were not exactly comfortable. In fact, they were genuinely dangerous, because it gets so much worse than just being in water for 6 hours, and what happened next was something neither of them expected. At some point during those 6 hours, Luke Thompson poured hot water on Yaren Ha, and Yaren actually burned herself on set during an intense scene for a period drama on Netflix. And if that wasn't already bad enough, the burn wasn't even the end of it. Shortly after, Yaren started developing hives because her skin reacted to everything that had been used during filming. So now you have an actress who has been sitting in a bathtub for hours, got burned, and is now breaking out in hives, and they still had more to film. The fact that none of this made it into the final scene, that what you see looks effortless and beautiful, is genuinely remarkable. But wait, because there's one more thing that happened during that bathtub scene, and it's the moment that the whole crew could not have planned for. Here's where it all comes together. With all the oil that had been used throughout that 6-hour shoot to get the bathtub scene looking right, the water, the product, all of it, the surface had become completely slippery. And at some point, Yaren Ha slid down in the bathtub, and Luke Thompson reached out to pull her back up, and his hand just slipped because everything was coated in oil. So here is Luke Thompson trying to rescue his co-star from sliding under the water of a bathtub, completely unable to get a grip, while Yaren is going down. After spending 6 hours filming on set, including sustaining a burn and developing hives, it was a very chaotic moment for Yaren, which is crazy, seeing how effortless and seamless that scene looks on screen. They eventually got her back up, but the image of Luke frantically trying to pull Yaren out of an oil-slicked bathtub with zero grip while cameras are still rolling on a Netflix period drama is the most absurd, chaotic, and somehow completely on-brand Bridgerton moment that has ever happened behind the scenes of this show.